Welcome to Budget MTG Decks. All the cards you see in our videos are $1 or less, with exception of the commander cards. Also, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and click the bell icon to be notified when a new video comes out. Hi and welcome to another episode of Budget MTG Decks. I'm David and today we're once again going to be looking at one of the 2019 Commander pre-constructed decks. In this case, we're going to be looking at Primal Genesis. We're going to be looking at all the cards in the deck, how they work, whether we think they're good or bad, how they should be used. And at the end of the video, we're going to be looking at some upgrade suggestions to improve this deck up to $25 in total price. The deck that we have today is a white, red, and green deck, also known as a Naya deck, with at the helm Ghired, Conclave Exile for 2, a red, a green, and a white. So for 5 mana, we get a 2/5 Human Shaman. And when this creature enters the battlefield, we're going to create a 4/4 green Rhino creature token with trample. And whenever this guy attacks, we're going to populate. And the populated token is going to enter the battlefield tapped and attacking. So this card does two things. It creates pretty chunky tokens, and it's also going to be populating every time it attacks. The strategy of this deck is very simple. We want to make large tokens. There's other token strategies that like to make lots of small tokens. This deck likes to make a few large tokens. We like to make copies of those tokens, and then we like to attack with impunity. It's very simple. The price of this deck, of course, is going to differ depending on where you get it, but the upgraded cards total a little bit over $25, and that's going to be spread out over 14 cards. If you do want to get this pre-constructed deck or the upgraded cards and you want to help out the channel, consider going to the link in the description below. It goes to TCG Player, and any purchase you do there, we will be able to get a small kickback from that. So if you want to help out the channel, it doesn't cost you anything more. Just buy whatever you want. It doesn't cost you a penny more, but it does help out the channel because we will get a small kickback from anything you purchase there. So thank you very much for doing that. Now let's have a look at all the cards split up by category. We divided the synergy cards into those that produce tokens, those that populate, so those that allow us to make copies of tokens, and the pump cards. We're going to start with the token creators. We start with Dragon Master Outcast, Doomed Artisan, and Rampaging Bailouts. Dragon Master Outcast for a single red mana. It's a 1/1 Human Shaman, comes in super early, and it states that at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 6 or more lands, we're going to put a 5/5 red dragon creature token with flying onto the battlefield. That is really nice, consistently putting down that 5/5 dragon. Going to be very nice after we've already put down those 6 lands. Doomed Artisan is a new card specially designed for this set, for this commander product. For 3 mana, it's a 1/1 Human Artificer, and it states at the beginning of your end step, we're going to create a sculpture token, and this sculpture token has power and toughness equal to the number of sculptures you control. So every turn, we're going to be creating a sculpture token, and they're going to be getting bigger and bigger as there's more and more sculptures, but they cannot attack or block. So we do have to find a way to get rid of Doomed Artisan, so then afterwards they can attack and block. So the flavor is building all these statues, and as soon as it dies, they come to life and they avenge him, I guess. That's the idea. And finally, we have Rampaging Bailouts for 6 mana. It's a 6/6 Trampler and has landfall, which means whenever we play a land, whenever a land enters the battlefield under our control, we're going to create a 4/4 green beast creature token. So that's, of course, very nice, especially when we've got ways of land fetching. So searching for lands, put them onto the battlefield more than one per turn, getting us those extra 4/4 green beasts. Very strong in any deck. Any green deck likes having Rampaging Bailouts. Doesn't really matter, especially in this token deck, also gravy. Then we have Rock Egg, Atla Palani Nest Tender, and Wingmate Rock. So this is kind of an egg and a bird kind of a themed section. The Rock Egg costs 3. It's a 0/3 defender, but when it dies, we're going to put a 3/3 white bird creature token with flying onto the battlefield. It's a fun card. It's absolutely fun. It's nice. You know, you kind of say, you can't attack me because if you do, I'm going to get a 4/4 flyer. But in essence, it's always kind of awkward. Same with Atla Palani, where this is for 4 mana, it's a 2/3 Human Shaman. It's got the ability for 2 mana and tapping it to create a 0/1 green egg creature token with Defender, and when the eggs die, we're going to reveal cards from the top of our library until we reveal a creature card and put it onto the battlefield. So essentially it cheats creatures into play as we're making eggs. It's kind of fun, thematic, but in essence, it's still one of those situations, just like with the rock egg, you cannot get value out of it exactly when you want to, and you kind of have to hope that people kind of help you out by, you know, wiping the board when you've got a bunch, or attacking into you with a non-flyer so you can block with it, so all that kind of stuff. And Wingmade Rock for 5 mana, it's a 4/3 flyer, and when it enters the battlefield, if we attacked with a creature this turn, we're going to get a 3/4 white bird creature token that's flying on the battlefield. And whenever this guy attacks, you gain 1 life for each attacking creature. So this is just solid. It's great. This is not hard. You just attack with something, then you get this guy with another 4/3 token, which of course you can populate. So that's actually very strong. Then we have Thragtusk, Garruk Primal Hunter. Sorry, I should say Garruk Primal Hunter, and Soul of Zendikar. Yes, I've got lots of complaints about pronouncing Garruk, which is incorrect, I've been told. But let's first start with Thragtusks for 5 mana. It is a 5/3 beast. When it enters the battlefield, we gain 5 life, and when it leaves the battlefield, we get a 3/3 beast creature token. Very solid. In Modern, this was played a lot. And in this deck, also just fine. It's a good beater, comes in early, gives us a little bit of life, and of course, when it leaves, it gives us a nice little 3/3 token that we can populate later on. Garruk Primal Hunter is a 5 mana planeswalker. 3 loyalty, its +1 is to put a 3/3 green beast creature token onto the battlefield. Very nice, happy with that. And -3 is draw cards equal to the greatest power among creatures you control. We are going to have tokens with quite a lot of power, so this is awesome for giving us as well a card draw built right into it. And for -6 is put a 6/6 green worm creature token onto the battlefield for each land you control. So the -6 really ends the game super fast. Beautiful inclusion, awesome card, old but very strong. And then Soul of Zendikar for 6 mana. It's a 6/6 creature avatar. It's got reach, and for 5 mana we can put a 3/3 green beast creature token with onto the battlefield. Now you can also do it again from the graveyard by exiling it and paying the same amount, but in essence this is not very good value. I mean, just a 6/6 for 6 with reach is nothing to write home about. It doesn't have any trample, and paying 5 mana for a 3/3 token is also not really what you might say a great deal. Then we have something that is a great deal, and that is a Giant Ataphage and Desolation Twin. Giant Ataphage costs 7. It is a 7/7 trampler. See, this is great. These are great. This is a very large creature with trample, so this is beautiful. And whenever this guy deals combat damage to a player, we're going to create a token that's a copy of this card. So this thing not only is going to be creating a giant creature, which we can giant token, which we can populate, but it's going to be making more and more as they stay on the battlefield. So this thing gets away with the game really fast and makes it really difficult for opponents if they don't kill the first one quickly, or if they don't have a board wipe ready. And Desolation Twin costs a whopping 10 mana. We get a 10/10 Eldrazi. When it comes in, we get another 10/10 creature token onto the battlefield. 10 mana for 2 10/10s. You may think, oh, that's awesome deal. They don't have trample, which means the fact that whether they're 6/6s or 10/10s doesn't really matter very much at some point. You really want that trample. If they're big, you want trample, and this one just doesn't have that, unfortunately. Then we have cards which allow us to make tokens of regular creatures. We got Mimic Vat, Hate Mirage, and Flame Rush Rider. Mimic Vat for 3 mana. It's an artifact, comes in, and it's got imprint, which means whenever a non-token creature dies, you may exile that card, and if you do, return each other card exiled with Mimic Vat to its owner's graveyard. And for 3 and tapping it, we're going to create a token that's a copy of a card exiled with Mimic Vat. It gains haste, exile at the beginning of the next end step. Okay, so essentially what this card says, it is a beautiful, beautiful card. Great as well in this deck, but also great just in pretty much any other deck. Whenever anything dies, that's a non-token. So whenever any regular creature dies, we're going to say, okay, pop, awesome, give me that thing. I'm going to put it underneath Mimic Vat, and now anytime I want, I can pay 3 and tap it and make a copy of that thing. It enters the battlefield, so it gets its entered the battlefield ability. I can attack with it because it's got haste, and then we're going to exile at the beginning of the end step, and next turn I can do it again, and if something better dies, bam, I'm going to replace that thing. The other thing goes away, and then now I get to make copies of that new thing. And this is especially strong with when a creature dies with a nice enter the battlefield ability. Like, for example, Acidic Slime. You can be able to play an Acidic Slime entering the battlefield for 3 mana every single turn. it is going to be brutal. Then we have Hate Mirage for 3 and a red. So for 4 mana, it's a sorcery. This is a new card specially made for this set. We choose up to 2 target creatures you don't control. For each of those creatures, create a token that's a copy of that creature. Those tokens gain haste. Exile them at the beginning of the next end step. Okay, so we want to be making creatures. We want to be making tokens and they're copies of some of our great creatures, or maybe populating some of those tokens. And this card allows us to get 2 tokens that are a copy of something we don't actually have, and that really depends on what our opponents are playing. And we know that we got good stuff, and we play stuff that likes to be copied as well, but we don't really know what our opponents are playing. Good chance that they will have something great, and then we can just get 2 of those things, and hopefully before they get exiled at the beginning of the next end step, we can populate them to make copies. But it still could be kind of iffy with Hate Mirage. Then we have Flame Rush Rider for 5 mana. It is a 3/3 human warrior, and says whenever this guy attacks, put a token onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. That's a copy of another target attacking creature. Exile the token at the end of combat. Okay, so this one we do need to attack with it, but it does have dash, which means we can attack with it on the turn that we cast it, but then we do have to return it to the battlefield, to our hand at the end of next end step though. But whenever it attacks, we're going to be able to make a token that's a copy of another creature that's also already attacking, and of course those tokens we can populate before we have to exile them at the end of combat, which is very nice. Then we have Felden of the Third Path and Soul Foundry. Felden of the Third Path, beautiful card for 3 mana, a 2/3 human artificer, and for 3 and tapping it, we can create a token, but this time not of the creature that's on the battlefield, but this time of a creature that's in our graveyard. It's also going to be an artifact in addition to its other types. It's going to gain haste, and we sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So every single turn, we are going to be able to get an awesome, strong enter the battlefield trigger, and maybe attack as well. Of something that's really strong that's in our graveyard. So first we're going to be making copies of stuff that's on our battlefield, and then with Felden, even if that stuff gets killed, we're going to be making copies of that stuff that's in our graveyard. And Soul Foundry, 4 mana, artifact, imprint. So when it comes in, we can remove a creature card from our hand, and that's going to be imprinted onto Soul Foundry, and then next time we can just pay X and tap it, and then put a creature token that's a copy of the imprinted card, where X is the converted mana cost. So for example, once again, in this example, if we have the Acidic Slime, we just put Acidic Slime, we exile it when we play Soul Foundry, as long as we have Acidic Slime in our hand. And then for 5 mana, we tap it and then put a token that's a copy of Acidic Slime. And the great thing is that in Soul Foundry versus a lot of the other cards we have been looking, we don't have to exile those tokens at the beginning of the next end step, so we just keep those around, which is very strong. Then we move on to the populate cards. So these are going to be the cards that allow us to make copies of those tokens that we've just made. First, Vitu-Ghazi Guildmage, Selesnya Eulogist, not Urologist, and Trostani Selesnya's Voice. Vitu-Ghazi Guildmage for 2 mana, 2/2, and for 4 mana we can populate, which is quite reasonable. We can also create a 3/3 green centaur creature token for 6 mana, which I think is just way too expensive. I already don't like paying 5 mana for 3/3s, let alone 6, so we're pretty much going to be using it exclusively for its populate cost. Selesnya Eulogist for 3 mana, it's a 3/3 Centaur Druid, especially made for this commander product, and it states that for 3 mana we can exile target creature card from a graveyard, then populate. So yes, we're playing commander, there's going to be creature cards in graveyards. There's going to be no lack of that, don't worry about that. So for 3 mana populating, I'm very happy with that. It's a great price. We can do it as many times as we want because it is not a tap ability, so it's also very strong, and it kind of works as well against those graveyard strategies. If somebody wants to reanimate something from their graveyard, bam, instant speed, we're going to be exiling that card that they want to reanimate and also populating. So this is actually a very strong card, and it works really well in this deck. Trostani Selesnya's Voice, powerful card, awesome, great reprint, very happy to see it in here again. For 4 mana, a 2/5 Dryad, and whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain life equal to that creature's toughness. Works very well with strong creatures that we have, and of course populating them, giving us even more life. This keeps us in the game for a long time. And for 3 mana and tapping it, we get to populate. So slightly worse than the Selesnya Eulogist, because it does require it to tap, so we can't use it multiple times. But I'm still very happy also with the additional ability of gaining us so much life over the course of the game. Then we have Wayfaring Temple, Growing Ranks, and Song of the World Soul. Wayfaring Temple for 3 mana, it's going to be XX, where X is the number of creatures you control in power and toughness. And whenever it deals combat damage to a player, we're going to populate. Unfortunately, once again, yes, this thing can be very large, but it doesn't have trample, so it makes it quite difficult to deal damage. But remember that we do want to attack in this deck. We want to make sure that we hit our opponents, also because our commander wants to be able to attack to be able to populate. So we're going to find ways around that. But to populate just by hitting is very nice. Growing ranks for 4 mana. It's an enchantment. It stays at the beginning of your upkeep. Populate. Cool. For free. Beginning of your upkeep, we're just going to be putting down another token that's a copy of a token that we already control every single turn. Great, great reprint. And Song of the World Soul for 6 mana. It's an enchantment. It says whenever you cast a spell, populate. This is a new card, specially made for this deck. Absolutely beautiful. Just play those spells and make those tokens. Make copies of those tokens, I mean. And then we have Full Flowering and Second Harvest. Full Flowering, and also a new card in this deck, in this made especially for this new commander product. For double X and green, it's a sorcery. We're going to populate X times. So if we pay X is 2, so we're going to be paying total of 5 mana. We're going to populate 2 times for 5 mana. Of course, as we get more mana, the more valuable this becomes. And Second Harvest, for 4 mana, it's an instant. For each token you control, put a token onto the battlefield. That's a copy of that permanent. This is an absolutely brutal card. Used to be under $1. Not for a long time now, because of simply how powerful this card is. And especially in this deck, it's going to be getting a lot of value. Perfect inclusion. Then we look at the pump spell, so this is good for making our creatures larger. Intangible Virtue and Commander's Insignia. Intangible Virtue, of course, no token deck is complete without Intangible Virtue. For 2 mana, it's an enchantment. Creature tokens you control get +1/+1 and have Vigilance. And Commander's Insignia, for 4 mana, it's an enchantment. Creatures you control get +1/+1 for each time you've cast your commander from the command zone this game. So as the game progresses, it's going to give more +1/+1 to all your creatures, so not just your creature tokens. Kind of a dubious inclusion. I mean, we really care about those tokens. I guess it's fine that it also gives it to your regular creatures, but it also, for 4 mana, you still need to play your commander, and then it's only going to give +1/+1, and then your commander needs to die, and then you need to recast your commander, and it only is going to give +2/+2, and that for 4 mana just doesn't seem like a great deal. Then we have Tangareth, First Mate, for 4 mana. It's a 5/5 Minotaur Warrior. The body is absolutely phenomenal. 5/5 for 4 mana. It's great. Also, it can't be blocked by more than 1 creature, which means that they're going to need at least a 6/6 or a Death Toucher to be able to stop this thing. And whenever an opponent attacks with 1 or more creatures, if this guy is tapped, you may have that opponent gain control of this creature until the end of combat. And if they do, choose a player or planeswalker that opponent is attacking, and this guy is attacking that player or planeswalker. So essentially what it says is somebody is going to be attacking, then we get to give this guy to the person who's attacking, and they can also attack the other person if we want to. And Marisi, Breaker of Coil, for 1, a red, a green, and a white. So for 4 mana, it is a 5/4 Cat Warrior. Your opponents can't cast spells during combat, so that kind of makes it a little bit safe when we're also attacking with our commander. And whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, we're going to goad each creature that player controls, which means that until the next turn, they have to attack each combat with all their creatures, and they have to attack somebody else if able. So this card is nice for combat in the sense that maybe in the first attack, it's kind of a pain because you have to make sure it survives, but should we have dealt damage to that player, they're going to have to swing in with their entire team, making follow-up combat turns much easier because they won't have any stuff to block with anymore. That is it for the synergy cards. Let's have a look at the protection cards. We divided the protection cards into targeted removal, board wipes, and those that protect us against damage. First, the targeted removal, we got Lightning Greaves and Cliffside Rescuer. Lightning Greaves costs 2, and it gives equipped creature haste and shroud, and the equip cost is 0. This is an absolutely fantastic commander staple. All commander decks pretty much can use it. Giving haste and shroud not only allows us to attack immediately with our commander, but it also protects our commander against targeted removal, and of course, we can over-equip it to anything else for 0. Remember, this is sorcery speed, so people can still respond to it with instant speed removal, so watch out for that. Cliffside Rescuer, for 2 mana, it's a 2/2 core soldier with vigilance. We can tap it and sacrifice it to make sure target permanent gains protection from all of our opponents from everything. So block, they can't be blocked, targeted, dealt damage, enchanted, equipped by anything of our opponents, so we can basically protect our that thing from targeted removal. Somebody wants to destroy our commander, for example. Then we have some protection against board wipes. That's Rootborn Defenses and Fresh Meat. Rootborn Defenses cost 3. It's an instant. We're going to be giving our creatures indestructible until the end of turn, and we also get to populate. So that's a nice little additional benefit, but mostly just when somebody plays a destroy all creature spells, deal X damage to all creatures, and we don't want our stuff to die. Rootborn Defenses, our stuff's indestructible. And we also get a nice little extra token on top of that. Fresh Meat costs 4. It's an instant. We're going to create a 3/3 green beast creature token for each creature put into a graveyard from the battlefield this turn. So we got lots of tokens, we got lots of creatures. Somebody plays a board wipe, then we say, okay, fine, Fresh Meat, we play that, and now instead of having those 10 creatures in combinations with tokens, now we're just going to get 10 3/3s. So we're not out of the game yet, even after a board wipe. And lastly, those that prevent damage, we got Druid's Deliverance and Emara Tandris. Druid's Deliverance costs 2. It's an instant. Prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to you this turn, and then populate. So somebody swings in with a team. We just say it doesn't matter. We just negate all that damage, and we also get a token on top of that. And Emara Tandris costs a whopping 7 mana, but we do get a 5/7 Elf Shaman that prevents all damage that would be dealt to creature tokens we control. So yeah, if we can just use them in combat far more efficiently. Doesn't really help us with our commander trying to get through and not dying in combat, but it does allow us to swing in more indiscriminately with our tokens, and also allows us to block a little bit safer with our tokens on top of that. That is it for the protection cards. Let's have a look at the control spells. We divide the control spells into those that deal with creatures, non-creatures, and the board wipes. We start with Ghired's Belligerence, Naiad Charm, and Beast Within. Ghired's Belligerence costs X and 2 reds, a sorcery. It deals X damage divided as you choose amongst any number of target creatures. And if a creature that was dealt damage this way dies this turn, we're going to populate. So this is an awesome card for just make sure you first ramp a little bit. Make sure you can put a little bit of mana into this to make sure you can kill as many creatures as possible, because for every creature we kill, we're going to be able to populate, and that's really what we want to be doing. It's kind of removal, but we also want to make sure we get as many populate triggers as possible. Naiad Charm costs only 3. It allows us to do one of 3 things: either deal 3 damage to target creature, return target card from a graveyard to its owner's hand, or tap all creature target player's control. Yes, we can use this to deal 3 damage to target creature. Nice little removal. I think it's also going to be very handy to use the last ability, tap all creatures target player controls, because then we can swing in with our commander without fear of our commander dying, so we can populate, maybe deal some extra damage attacking with some other stuff. That's going to be really nice with Naiad Charm. And of course, return target card from a graveyard to its owner's hand. Green doesn't usually have the ability to get any card. It usually just allows us to get permanents back or creatures, stuff like that. And this one allows us to get any card back from our graveyard back to our hand, which is actually going to be very, very useful. And of course, Beast Within, Commander Staple. Beautiful that it's getting reprinted for 3 mana. Destroy target permanent. Its controller creates a 2/2 green beast creature token. We're going to have, doesn't matter, we got more creatures. We got bigger creatures. We're going to have rhinos that are 4/4. So we don't really care if somebody gets a 3/3 green beast creature token. And we can destroy any permanent, which is pretty much unheard of in this color combination. But, you know, if green gets this, it doesn't really matter. It's very strong. I'm very happy to see it reprinted. And then we have Heartpiercer Manticore, Angel of Sanctions, and Trostani's Judgment. Heartpiercer Manticore for 4 mana. It's a 4/3 Manticore, and when it enters the battlefield, we may sacrifice another creature. And if we do, this guy's gonna deal damage equal to that creature's power to target creature or player. So this is actually kind of nice. Removal comes in, we sacrifice a token, a 3/3 beast, for example, and then we can shoot 3 damage to another creature and then kill that thing. Or we can sacrifice maybe one of our 10/10 Desolation Eldrazi, and then we deal 10 damage to our opponent's face. Very nice. And of course, when this creature dies, it's going to be in our graveyard, and we can embalm it for 6, so we can play it again. From our graveyard, it's going to come in as a token. It's going to be a white zombie Manticore, but we can use this ability again, which is very nice. Angel of Sanctions, very similar. For 5 mana, it's a 4/3 angel with flying. When it enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent and opponent's controls until this card leaves the battlefield. So this is nice. So it's kind of like an Oblivion Ring that allows us to exile a non-land permanent when it comes in. And later on, when it does get killed, we can embalm it again for 6 mana, which means we're going to be putting a token that's a copy of it onto the battlefield. And of course, remember with these 2 cards, these tokens, we can populate them and then get their effects over and over again, populating them many times as we want. And Trostani's Judgment is the last one. For 6 mana, it's an instant, exile target creature, then populate. 6 mana to exile target creature is kind of steep, even with the populate. it's kind of overcosted, but yeah, if you want some more populate triggers instead of getting a Path to Exile, for example, for 1 mana, then I'm not sure it's worth the extra 5 mana, but it's in there. Then for the non-creature removal, we got Sundering Growth, Slice in Twain, and Tectonic Hellion. Sundering Growth for 2 mana, instant, destroy target artifact or enchantment, and then populate. Perfect, very nice. 2 mana to destroy target artifact or enchantment is fine for instant speed, and the populate tacked on there for free is absolute gravy. Perfect card. Slice in Twain for 4 mana, instant, destroy target artifact or enchantment, and then draw a card. Not too excited about that. I don't think it fits very well thematically, and I think also to destroy only 1 target artifact or enchantment for 4 mana, even if it is instant speed. And the draw, I don't think that costed very nicely. And Tectonic Hellion, it's an 8/5 with haste, so it comes in, it's going to be dealing tons of damage. And whenever it attacks, each player who controls the most lands sacrifices 2 lands. Considering we're in red, green, and white, you think we have access to getting lots and lots of land drops, so we're not going to be the one who has fewer lands. So it seems still kind of weird that that this card is in here, because we would like to have, we're probably going to have more lands anyway. But, so it's a new card, especially for the set. It also doesn't have anything to do with tokens, so it's peculiar. Then we have the board wipes. We have Phyrexian Rebirth and Hour of Reckoning. Phyrexian Rebirth for 6 mana, sorcery, destroy all creatures, then create an XX colorless horror artifact creature token, where X is the number of creatures destroyed this way, so this thing is going to be huge. We're going to wipe the board and then create a huge token, which of course we can copy. And Hour of Reckoning costs 7 mana, also sorcery, but we can use Convoke to reduce this cost by 1 for each, for 1 mana for each creature we tap. So we can actually play for free if we have enough creatures. And we destroy all non-token creatures. Very nice, because we're of course all about those tokens. That is it for the control spells. Let's have a look at the card advantage spells. As this deck doesn't really have any ways of getting cards from the graveyard back to our hand, we decided to divide the card advantage spells into single and repeatable use. To start, we got Harmonize and Voice of Many. Harmonize costs 4, it's a sorcery, draw 3 cards. Unusual in green, just like Beast Within. Very odd that this card exists, but it's very good, very strong, so I'm happy to see it in here. Good reprint. The Voice of Many is a new card, specially made for this set. For 4 mana, it's an Elf Druid. It's a 3/3. When he enters the battlefield, draw a card for each opponent who controls fewer creatures than you. And yes, we are playing tokens, maybe big tokens, but we'll probably have more creatures than our opponents, so there's a good chance we'll draw at least 3 cards from Voice of Many if we're playing a 4-man pod. Then we have Momentous Fall and Shamanic Revelation. Momentous Fall costs 4 mana. It's an instant. As an additional cost to cast this spell, we sacrifice a creature and we draw cards equal to the sacrificed creature power, and we gain life equal to its toughness. Very strong card. Very happy to see this card reprinted. It was very expensive. And the beauty of this is that it's instant speed, which means we can attack with our creatures. Somebody uses targeted removal against one of our fatties. We say, fine, you're going to kill it anyway. Now all I'm going to do is sacrifice it, and I'm going to draw cards and gain life equal to its toughness. Oh, sorry, draw cards equal to its power and gain life to its toughness. And that is going to be absolutely brutal. It is a fantastic card in this deck. Shamanic Revelation for 5 mana, draw a card for each creature we control, and we also gain 4 life for each creature we control with power 4 or greater. As we said already, we're going to make large tokens, so we're going to have lots of creatures with 4 power or greater, so we're going to be gaining lots of life, and of course drawing a card for each creature we control is going to be fantastic. Perfect inclusion, very flavorful in this deck. Then we have the repeatable spells. To draw us cards, we got Elemental Bond, Colossal Majesty, and Garrick's Pack Leader, not Garrick Pack Leader. Elemental Bond for 3 mana, it's an enchantment. Whenever a creature with power 3 or greater enters the battlefield under our control, we draw a card. Perfect, so even those beasts are going to be drawing us cards when they come in. For each token, we'll be drawing a card. Colossal Majesty also costs 3 mana, also is an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, you draw a card. So this is not for every creature comes in, it's just at the beginning of your upkeep, you just check. Do we have it? Yes, cool, draw a card. And of course, those Rhino tokens that our commander makes are power 4 or greater, so essentially guarantees a draw every turn. And Garrick's Pack Leader for 5 mana, it's a 4/4. Whenever another creature with power 3 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. So it's essentially the same as Elemental Bond, but now tacked onto a 4/4 creature. Very nice. Then we have 2 new cards that have been created for this set. We've got Idol of Oblivion and Oran Frostfang. Idol of Oblivion costs 2 mana. We can tap it to draw a card, but we can only do this if we created a token this turn. And for 8 mana, tapping and sacrificing it, we can create a 10/10 colorless Eldrazi creature token. This is very nice. Strong, synergizes well with what this deck wants to do. It compensates a little bit of the card draw, which we may be missing, so it is fantastic. And it also later on allows us to create big tokens should we need those. Oran Frostfang costs 5 mana. We get a 2/6, and it also states that attacking creatures you control have Death Touch, and whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card. Fantastic card, perfectly themed. We want to attack with this deck. We want to actually attack with impunity with this deck. And this Frostfang allows us to do that by giving all our creatures Death Touch, including our commander, which means that it's a little bit less scary to attack in combat now because our opponents know that anything they block with will also be decimated. Very nice. And of course, if they don't, we're going to be drawing cards, which is win-win in my book. That is it for the card advantage cards. Let's have a look at the ramp. We divided the ramp cards into land fetch cards and the mana rocks. To start off, we got Sakura Tribe Elder, Farseek, and Cultivate. These cards, commander staples, all allow us to search for a basic land put onto the battlefield tapped. Farseek, however, does not allow us to look for a forest, and Cultivate allows us to get an extra land that we put into our hand on top of the one that we put onto the battlefield tapped. Then we have Explore and Scare Tiller. Explore costs 2, it's a sorcery. We're going to be drawing a card and we can play an additional land this turn, so it kind of counts as card draw, kind of counts as mana ramp. And Scare Tiller states that whenever it becomes tapped, you may choose one, either put a land card from our hand onto the battlefield tapped, or return a land card from our graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So this is kind of an awkward card because, yes, it does have a lot of toughness, so you can reliably attack with it, but it costs 4 mana to play, and then only on turn 5 at the earliest will it be able to attack, and then you only get value if you have a land card still in your hand, or if there's a land card in your graveyard. All kind of difficult to get a lot of value out of it. And for the mana rocks, we have but one card, and that is Soul Ring for 1 mana. It can tap for 2 colorless. What can we say more about this than that it's an extremely powerful, overpowered card, and it's beautiful, and it shouldn't be played, but since it can be played, it should be played, and yeah, it should be under $1, I think, because it's being reprinted in every single commander product known to man. But it's not. It's still around the $3 or something. So it probably should be. It's powerful enough. Anyway, those are the ramp cards. Let's have a look at the lands. The Wizards of the Coast has divided the lands into 7 plains, 4 mountains, 8 forests, and 20 non-basics. And we're going to go through the non-basics kind of fast. Blossoming Sands, Grey-Pelled Refuge, and Kazandu Refuge all come in tapped. It can give us mana of 1 of 2 colors and gain us 1 life when they come in. We have Rugged Highlands, Sungrass Prairie, and Cinder Glade. Rugged Highlands is the same as the cards before. Sungrass Prairie is a nice filter land, which allows us to put a 1 mana of any color into it, tapping it, and gives us a green and a white. And Cinder Glade is going to come in tapped unless we control 2 or more basic lands. Then we have Silesian Sanctuary, Boros Garrison, and Gruul Turf. These come in tapped. We got to bounce a land back when we play them, but they do tap for 2 mana of any 2 color combinations. And then we have Ash Barrens, Rogue's Passage, and Gargoyle Castle. Ash Barrens taps for colorless, but it does have basic land cycling for 1 mana, which is very nice because it allows us to discard this card, pay 1 mana, and then search for a basic land card. It allows us to kind of make sure we get the right colors. Rogue's Passage gives us taps for colorless, but for 4 mana and tapping it, we can make sure that target creature can't be blocked this turn. That's nice because we do have some very, very big creatures, and for example, our commander, which we don't want to die in combat, it's a very nice target for that. And Gargoyle Castle taps for colorless, but we can also pay 5 mana and tap it and sacrifice it to get a 3/4 colorless Gargoyle artifact creature with token with flying, which is of course a nice target for our populate mechanic. Then we have a Jungle Shrine, Exotic Orchard, and Command Tower, all pretty much going to tap for any mana that we need. Jungle Shrine, however, does come in tapped, and Exotic Orchard needs to be able to produce something, a mana of a color that our lands of our opponents could produce. Sorry, but that's going to be pretty much any color. And Command Tower, of course, can only produce mana of the color of our color identity of our commander. And then we have Naya Panorama, Croson Verge, and Myriad Landscape. These cards can all be tapped to and can all be sacrificed. Can all be tapped and sacrificed to search for lands and put them onto the battlefield. So is the case for Terramorphic Expanse and Evolving Wilds. Just come in, you just tap them, sacrifice, look for basic land, put it onto the battlefield, tapped. That is it for the lands. Now let's have a look at the upgrade cards that we think would vastly improve the quality of this deck. Alright, so the first upgrade cards that we've selected is Grove of the Guardian, Armada Worm, and Blade of Cells. Grove of the Guardian is a land that can tap for a colorless, but we can also pay 5 and tap it, and tap 2 untapped creatures we control to sacrifice this land and put an 8/8 green and white elemental creature token with vigilance onto the battlefield. And this is of course a nice big chunky token that we can use to populate and get more copies of. We decided to take out Croson Verge instead of this one. Then we have Armada Worm for 2 green and 2 white. So for 6 mana, we get a 5/5 Trampler. And when this worm enters the battlefield, we're going to put another 5/5 green worm creature token with Trample onto the battlefield. So this is nice. We get 10 power with Trample, which is also that's exactly the kind of thing that we want on our big creatures. We want them to have Trample. And the beauty of this, of course, is a great target for our populate mechanic. We decided to take out Rock Egg instead of that because the egg just makes you jump through too many hoops. Then we have an amazing card for this deck, Blade of Cells. I'm very sad they didn't already put it into this commander product to begin with. Blade of Cells costs 2 mana. It's an equipment. Equip cost is 4, and the equip creature has Myriad, which means that whenever it attacks for each opponent other than defending player, you may create a token that's a copy of that creature that's tapped and attacking that player or planeswalker they control, and we're going to exile those tokens at the end of combat. So the absolute beauty of this is we're going to put it onto an awesome creature. We're going to attack. We're going to get those tokens, and then we're going to populate those tokens so we get to keep those. I'm going to repeat that over and over again every time, putting the Blade of Cells on the biggest, chunkiest, most scary creature that we have. And to take out Atla Palni Nest Tender is, I don't think, such a big downfall, considering all the hoops that also this card requires us to jump through to just get any value whatsoever. And Blade of Cells is already, even if we don't even populate those tokens, we're going to be dealing tons and tons of damage to our opponents with just all those extra tokens that are going to be swinging in. Then we have Minion Reflector, Flame Shadow Conjuring, and Twin Flame. Minion Reflector for 5 mana. It's an artifact. States whenever a non-token creature comes into play under your control, you may pay 2 mana. If you do, put a token that's a copy of that creature, and that creature has haste, and we have to sacrifice it at the end of our turn. So essentially what it states is whenever we play a creature that's not a token, we can pay an extra 2 mana, we're going to get a token of that. So that is going to be exactly what this deck wants to do. Getting lots and lots of tokens that, of course, then we can populate. And we're going to take out one of the planes instead of this card because we had too many lands to begin with. So we're going to take out one of the planes. That should be fine. Flame Shadow Conjuring is an enchantment that costs 4 mana. And whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under control, we're going to pay 1 red. If we do, put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of that creature. And we're going to exile at the beginning of the next end step. So very similar to Minion Reflector, except now instead of paying 2 mana of any color, we're going to pay 1 red, and instead of sacrificing it at the end of the turn, we have to exile at the beginning of the next end step. So, but very similar cards in essence. We're going to take out Voice of Many as a card draw spell, because I thought we had enough of the other cards that gave us more valuable card draw, and I'd rather just have more tokens that we want to populate anyway. Then we have Twin Flame for 2 mana. It's a sorcery, and we can strive, so we can use more copies. We can make more copies for an additional 3 mana every single time. And we can choose any number of target creatures we control, and for each of them put a token that's a copy of that creature onto the battlefield. Those creature tokens have haste. Exile them at the beginning of the next end step. So very similar to what we've just been doing. For 2 mana, we can make a copy of something, and of course, it's got haste, and we gotta sacrifice it. We gotta exile at the beginning of the next end step. But for 5 mana, we can do it for 2, and for 8 mana, we can do it for 3. So every time adding 3 mana, we can make more and more copies. And you may want to just make a calculated effort to have a look at if you could still populate with additional mana. So don't waste all your mana into making these tokens that are copies. But I think it's a little bit stronger than Hate Mirage, which I wanted to take out because that one's very dependent on what your opponents have. And with Twin Flame, you look at your creatures, and of course I think we've got a little bit better stuff that's more valuable to us than what potentially our opponents have, so it should be a little bit more reliable. Then we have Frontline Medic, Odric Master Tactician, and Iroas God of Victory. Frontline Medic is in here for 3 mana. It's a 3/3 human cleric, and whenever this guy attacks with at least 2 other creatures you control are indestructible this turn. Why is this card in here? We want to make sure that we can attack with our commander, we want to make sure we can attack with our tokens, and we don't want to lose our commander, especially because we're going to be populating. And so we figured out we need a few ways to make sure that we can get our commander into combat so we can populate without fear of losing our commander. So Frontline Medic gives our creatures indestructible, and that makes sure that we don't lose it. That's why we took out Druid's Deliverance, which kind of, stops making combat very dangerous for 1 turn, but Frontline Medic allows us to continuously attack and keep on getting those populate triggers from our commander. Odric Master Tactician for 4 mana is a 3/4 human soldier with first strike. In here for exactly the same reason. When you attack with this guy and 3 other creatures, at least 3 other creatures, you choose how creatures block this combat, whether they do or not, and exactly how. So essentially we can just swing in with Odric and 3 other creatures, one of which of course will be our commander preferably, and then we can just say our commander gets through, doesn't get killed. And we can, of course, with the first strike, we can kill some stuff. So it becomes really nasty because also we have very large creatures. Our creature tokens that we produce are very big. So we can also just kill a lot of stuff. So it's almost, removal built in and protection from our commander dying in combat. So it does pretty much everything you want. And for that, we took out Commander's Insignia, which does pump our creatures, but I'd rather just choose who attacks and, who blocks and how. And the extra +1 or +2 is kind of irrelevant with creature tokens that are already 4/4s, 5/5, 6/6, etc. Then we have Iroas, God of Victory for 4 mana, a 7/4 legendary creature enchantment god. It's indestructible, and as long as your devotion to red and white is less than 7, it isn't a creature, and preferably I'd actually like to keep it as not being a creature, because then it's even more difficult to get removed because there's very little exile enchantment effects that people are playing, so it's very hard to get rid of. It says that creatures you control have menace, which is very nice for when we're attacking. It makes it a lot harder for people to block your stuff and kill it, and prevent all damage that would be dealt to attacking creatures you control. Once again, this makes sure that when we're attacking with our commander, when we're attacking with our tokens, we can just swing in. It doesn't really matter if people block, because we're not going to be our creatures are not going to be dying in combat anyway, and it's very hard for people to block efficiently because they have menace, so they got to use multiple creatures. They might probably lose some creatures. It becomes a whole ordeal, and we're populating all happily as this is happening. So Iroas God of Victory helps us to make sure that our commander can attack with impunity, and we take out Tagarth First Mate because it's a fun card and allows us to swing and do some damage, but it does nothing with respect to the synergy or the strategy of this deck. Doesn't have anything to do with tokens, doesn't have anything to do with populate, doesn't produce its own tokens, doesn't make it easier to attack into our opponents, so it had to go. Then we have Acidic Slime, Savage Ventmaw, and Hellkite Charger. Acidic Slime we put in here because we wanted a nice creature that we could make copies of, and whose tokens that we made copies of we could populate against, so we can continuously destroy artifacts, enchantments, or lands, which is very, very strong. And of course, it also has Death Touch, which is a lot of tokens which have a Death Touch becomes a pain in the butt to attack into. And for that, we took out Slice in Twain, which I thought already was kind of a mediocre non-creature removal spell anyway. Savage Ventmaw is next for 6 mana. It's a 4/4 flyer, and when this dragon attacks, we're going to get 6 mana until the end of the turn, and we don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. And this is very nice because it gives us a little bit of mana ramp, a little bit more reliable mana ramp for later on in the game when we need a lot of mana, and it works very well with the next card as well. Instead of this card, we will be taking out a Scare Tiller to make room for Savage Ventmaw, because as we said already, the Scare Tiller is kind of a mediocre card that doesn't really fit well with the strategy of this deck. Hellkite Charger costs 6 mana. It's a 5/5 flyer with haste, but when it attacks, we pay 7 mana, and if we do, untap all attacking creatures after this phase, and there's an additional combat phase. Additional combat phases are handy in this deck because every time our commander attacks, we get to populate. If we have the Savage Ventmaw, every time we attack, we get 6 mana already, which means we already have 6 out of the 7 mana available to us for every attack, so we can get an additional combat phase. They work very well together, but otherwise just paying 7 mana every single turn to get 2 combat phases and populating 2 things is just fine anyway. And we took out the Tectonic Hellion for that because it also had no synergy in here, and it just doesn't seem to have any real tactic that works well with the rest of the deck, considering the land removal is not really something this deck is looking to do. It's just awkwardly placed, and also kind of expensive at 7 mana for what it does. They move on to the last of the upgrade cards, and that is God Pharaoh's Gift and Udvara Hellkite. God Pharaoh's Gift, expensive at 7 mana. It's an artifact. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may exile a creature card from your graveyard. If you do, create a token that's a copy of that card, except it's a 4/4 black zombie. It gains haste until the end of turn. So this is an interesting card. Usually you don't want this card in graveyard strategies because you want to be recurring your cards from your graveyard. You don't want to be exiling creature cards from your graveyard. However, since we have almost no recursion in this deck, it is a perfect card because it also creates tokens. And so we're going to be creating copies of these creatures that are in the graveyard, and then we're going to exile those cards. It does reduce, well, it probably will reduce the power and toughness of some of our bigger creatures to 4/4s if they're bigger. But the beauty of it is that these creatures do have haste, but they also stay. We don't have to exile them or sacrifice them at the end of the turn. So as the game progresses, if these things don't die, we get to keep them, which is very nice. And decided to take out Desolation Twin for that, as the 10 mana was a bit steep anyway. I think we're going to get more value out of God Pharaoh's Gift. And lastly, Udvara Hellkite for a whopping 8 mana. Yes, this card is expensive. We took out some expensive cards anyway, so it doesn't really matter. We get a 6/6 flying dragon, and whenever dragon you control attacks, we can create a 6/6 red dragon creature token with flying. And we have multiple dragons, especially after the upgrades, in this deck, so being able to attack and getting multiple 6/6 red dragon creature tokens with flying is absolutely beautiful. People need to deal with this card, or else they have lost the game. And we took out Soul of Zendikar, which was a mediocre token producer at best, and replaced it with this sweet dragon. Alright, that is it for the cards that we think would make great upgrades. If you think there's some cards that we missed, if you think there's some other cards that would be even better, let us know. Or maybe some cards that you think you would take out instead of the cards that we took out, let us know in the comments below. Or let us know via the social medias at Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, at Budget MTG Decks. Let us know what you think, which cards you would change, and which cards we missed, or anything else you want to let us know about these decks, whether you like them, whether you don't like them, and how they would be changed. Thank you very much for watching. I'm David, and this was Budget MTG Decks. Find all the cards discussed in this video in the description below. Also, show you're a fan of the channel by rocking this awesome Budget MTG Decks merchandise. This show was made possible by the support of our loyal patrons. Head on over to patreon.com/budgetmtgdecks and donate as little as $1 per month.